is Sam Legursky, I suppose.
Yes, Sam and I have been friends for, our two boys are the same age, so they hung out. Sam and I coached baseball together,
Oh,
and he lives I'm not far from him, a couple blocks away.
the impression I got is that you knew each other from hanging out at Logren's all the time.
We did hang out there a couple times. Not every night, but yes, we had a few roundups.
And so part of that is, we are. I kind of bring that up jokingly as there's the history that we're kind of talking about is about Checkers, the running club / the bar, I suppose.
That's what it was when I was there.
And I suppose that you haven't run in a number of years, or do you still jog at all? Or?
No, I don't. I had a knee replacement about a year and a half ago. I have not run competitively in, oh gosh, a long, long time. The last race I probably ran was the Lachlan's race. And then I would just run that to finish.
Yeah.
I wasn't running competitively, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so I guess the era that we're really looking to talk about a lot, you would have been in your early 20s from what I gather. We're talking about the mid 70s, 74, 75 through the end of the 70s. You're one of the you're on what's written in Joe Jordan's history of the club as the original five-member team that ran as Checkers.
I don't know do I go back that early? Maybe I do. When I from 69 to 73, I ran for St. Joe's under the Bob Ivory years. So I then went from there to run at Fredonia for Dr. Phillips. And we had a pretty good team there. We won the state system track. Our cross country was pretty good. And it was getting better as I was leaving. So after I came home from that, I wasn't doing anything and I was working out, and my brother talked me into doing a couple marathons and training with him all the time. And so I did start running quite a bit of road races and so forth. Back in those days, road races weren't 5K. That was never even heard of. A short road race was probably a 5-miler. Then you had your 10Ks and your 20Ks that we mostly run. So, I guess in comparison, these 5Ks are just little sprints compared to what people used to do. So that's when I started to do a lot of running for him. And I had just begun working for Niagara Mohawk at the time. So being a meter reader, I was running from house to house all day in 1978. And then at that time, Joe Freeman opened up Runner's Roost right next door to Checkers. And I walked in there one day and told him my credentials, and he hired me as his first employee. And we had a good time. We did it for a long time.
That's in addition.
And I joined Checkers. Basically, back then, I don't know how familiar you are, there was the Greater Buffalo Running Club, which was kind of a little bit harder to get into when I was in high school. And then there's the Eldridge Bicycle Club, which a lot of more younger people joined. But then as I came back from Fredonia, the three clubs were either the Buffalo Philharmonic Running Club, Bell Watling, and then Checkers. So Checkers being where we hung out is, basically I joined Checkers, and we had a number of the runners I used to run with all the time in the area. In fact, I was going through some paper articles today just to see what was about that I hadn't refreshed my memory and anything. And I came across an article written by the editor of the sports page then, Bill O'Brien, who I ran with at St. Joe's, and Bill ran for Syracuse.
Yeah.
And Bill had come back in to run I think it was 1978 Skyline Marathon. And he had come from Oregon to come back in and run the race, and he did not have a great day. And that was written up. So I sent him a picture of the article, and he texted me back saying, "Oh my gosh," he goes, I don't even remember writing this. Now he lives in Washington, D.C.
So he's in Oregon in the mid to late 70s?
Yeah.
running at Oregon.
He graduated from Syracuse University. He ran for Syracuse.
Okay.
And then went up to Oregon to do his master's.
Gotcha.
And, ran around out there. I know he ran some really good marathons because Bill was, like a 9-minute 2-miler in college, or if not better. He could run.
And so these stories, you ran at St. Joe's 69 to 73, then on to Fredonia. And part of the history that we're kind of setting this into is there's this thing that we might look back on, and they refer to the 70s as the running boom.
Yes, it was.
And so
basically late 70s, 77, 78, and it became super popular.
Yep.
I don't remember if you remember, like there was a time when there was a bicycling boom. Then there was a time there was a tennis boom. Everybody had to play tennis.
Yeah.
You couldn't find a tennis court. And then the running boom came. I think it came, I could be wrong on this, but shortly after Frank Shorter won the Olympic marathon.
72?
Is it 72, 76?
I don't know. I just made that up, really.
But that's when it became really, really, really popular. As I was looking through, some of the names of people who were on Checkers and competed with Checkers, you see things like, not my brother Bob ran for Bell Watley, but my brother Tom and his wife ran with Checkers, and they weren't runners at that time in their lives, but they did it for fun. I had a brother-in-law, Lou, who was not an athlete, but he ran a couple of marathons, and he ran them under 4 hours. This guy was never a runner his whole life, but everybody started doing it, and it was just amazing.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious as to the relationship between what I imagine as somebody that at that time would have had an identity, so to speak, is kind of within the tradition where you ran at high school and you ran at college and you ran on tracks and you ran cross country, and running was a certain kind of way. And then the running boom happens, and then there's road races, and then all of a sudden there's this kind of huge mass of people. It's a much larger thing. And so I'm curious if there's if at the time there was any kind of reaction or relationship to that, if it was welcomed, if it was seen as getting in the way of the kind of running that you did, or if it just like meant that there was more people around at the bar.
I think it was pretty welcome. A lot of people did it. A lot of people didn't do it very seriously. They weren't training for the Olympics. They were training just to stay a little bit healthier. The guys you could see at the bar at night, the next day you'd see out on the road somewhere. Training back then a lot was, what they used to call it. Bob Ivory had named LSD, long, slow distance. You used to just go out and put in miles. So, and the place to run in North Buffalo, obviously, was Delaware Park. So you could go over there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and all of a sudden, there's 500 people out there. Not 500, but there's quite a few people out there running. And so the more the merrier. You could see people, say hello to them, and there wasn't just a bunch of weird guys running around the place. Now we get everybody, men and women, and young and old, and everybody doing it. It was a lot of. I think it made it more fun.
Yeah.
Also made races a lot more fun. And I think about then, you probably started to get a little partying at the races. Before then, it was if you were out there running a race, you were out there running a race. So,
yeah, I know. Part of that you mentioned that with there being that many more people at Delaware Park, that there wasn't all of a sudden that there wasn't just like a bunch of weird people there, but to all the non-runners, they were like, yeah, all these weird runners all of a sudden took over the park, and it was
Yeah, there was and there was at the time, I believe you could still drive your cars through the park.
Mm-hmm.
So
all the way around.
All the way around.
I didn't know that was ever a possibility. Interesting.
Oh no, that didn't happen until about later on, but you could drive your car all the way around, and so you had to watch. A lot of people did the running up on the grass. There There used to be kind of a path there. A lot of people ran up there, not as many in the street, because there was one way, but it still, you could drive all the way around. And of course, when you got near the basketball court, you had to be careful because there were a lot of cars there, and occasionally a golf ball or two would come winging by you. My wife was once running around there, got hit in the elbow with a golf ball. Yeah, over by where the police radio station
Yeah.
is. And,
So would that be kind of where everybody went and ran every day, or like that's just where you would get together? Did you have like your own routes that you would run from home, or?
it's funny. I pretty much at that time in my life was working out with my brother. So I lived on Shoshone. I would run over to his house on Depew, and we would run over to the park. And on most days, did about 5 laps, and then ran home. So I got like a 12-mile workout almost every day.
And this
every once in a while, he and I would hit a track, very infrequently. And as marathons came rolling around, on Saturday mornings we would wake up and be on the road by before 7, and we would do a 20-mile heading out Colvin. So we ran around in the park there, out to Ellicott Creek Road, down to Sweet Home, back down Sweet Home to Sweet Home High School, turn around and go back. So every Saturday morning we were getting a 20-miler in. Of course, trying to run a 20-miler before 7 in the morning on Saturday, and being a 25 or 6-year-old, there were some long mornings. Because Friday nights ended pretty late.
One of the great complications of being a young runner is that after training for marathons for, a year or two, you start to get to the point where you're really asking questions because you're losing every single Friday night, or you're having a lot of tough Saturday mornings.
Right. Well, the good part is that I got home from that, and I had time to shower, and then I would probably work at Runner's Roost at 9 or 10 in the morning when they reopened. So I was up and got most of the poison out of me, and was feeling a lot better when I went to work than I was when I was running.
A good long run can really work miracles.
Yeah. Sure
so you're working at Runner's Roost and Niagara Mohawk simultaneously?
Yes.
And running.
And running. Yeah, I would generally come home, go out for my run, and then I worked maybe 2 nights a week, 3 nights a week on a Saturday or something. And I go into work at 6, and then we close at like 9 or something. But
and
I have to run 4 to 6.
Where does so Runner's Roost is next door to Checkers, and so you're working at Checkers, or you're working at Runner's Roost. I imagine it's also kind of like a hangout where runners kind of get together at the Runner's Roost too, and kind of maybe loiter around a bit and talk runner shop, and then they go next door and drink at Checkers.
I don't know if they really hung around too much. They were definitely patrons of Checkers. Were in the Checkers running club. The bartender Mike McDonald was in the club. Obviously Joe Jordan and his wife Sue. And then there were a bunch of they were older than I am, so I'll say older guys. Were who used to hang out at Checkers every night. Were on the club, and they ran, and they just did it for fun and because of the boom, and everybody was doing it to stay healthy. There were a few super runners who they didn't hang out as much in Checkers, but they were good guys to come. Matt Hallaher, Bill O'Brien, Trammels. I don't know if you remember him from Amherst High School, Lanny Doan. He works with us.
I definitely know the name. Yeah. So what was it? Seems like maybe you might have been in a middle ground where you described the super runners that didn't hang out at Checkers very much, and then there was kind of the people that hung out at Checkers a lot and ran less, and then you were in the neighborhood, and seems like you were at Checkers less, but you didn't consider yourself a super runner.
There was always a class that probably would beat me, but I considered myself probably in the top quarter. Mm-hmm. Now let's see. I think like at the turkey trots, I would probably run 27 minutes, maybe 28. Um, and that's with all the various finish line. Finish line changed like 3 times during that period. And then I was running marathons. I think I ran Skyline in 3:07. I ran Boston 2:48, 2:52, something like that.
Yeah.
And my best one I ever ran was Presque Isle, which is, the easiest course. So I ran a 2:46 there. So I was certainly decent. I wasn't Division 1A college material, but I was Division 3, and enjoyed it very much.
And yeah, so the club history that I assume Joe Jordan wrote it up. He speaks of getting the original team together because of, is it Matt Heller, or is that how you pronounce his name?
Yes.
Yeah. And so what would be, so you're on this, maybe it was, many other different teams ran, but you're listed as being on the first team that Checkers got together officially. As the history's written, it was in, I think, 1974. He put you guys in the Coles race.
That's what I don't remember.
That's what's
yeah, that could be.
We'll just make that up, and let's say that might be true. So how would that so you would have a relationship with Checkers, and they'd pay your entry fees and give you a jersey, and then that was.
I think they gave us a jersey, entry fee to races, but Joe might have paid once or twice, but never often. We just did our own. Entry fees back then weren't $70 either. It's $5 or $10.
Right.
So we did pay our most of our own entry fees, but I know that like after the Skyline Marathon, Joe had rented a couple of rooms in some little hotel, and we had a big party, and he had food and beer there for everybody, and then he would bring beer to a lot of the races and so forth. Every once in a while, we'd have a gimmick sort of a race. One time over at Delaware Lake, we had 2 laps, but he had refrigerator boxes, kiddie pools, hoses, stuff he had to run through, and it was just for fun.
Yeah.
But that was fun. And then the one that we did was the 24-hour relay, which you probably read about, where we ran over at Nichols Track for 24 hours to raise money for, I can't remember.
Special Olympics, I think.
Yeah, I think it was. I was on a 10-man team. I think we ran 22 miles. I ran pretty quick because I was always of the opinion, why be out here any longer than I have to? But I had several people on my team who were some of the bar bums and who probably averaged, 9 minutes a mile or something like that. I was averaging, I think I averaged right about 6 minutes, just under 6 minutes, 5.5 minutes maybe. But, yeah, a little tough during the middle of the night. Plus it rained thunderstorm at night on our cinder track. A lot of fun to do that.
Do you know? We talked. Just brought up the Coles race. Do you know that did the Coles race become the Subaru Chase?
No, I don't know that.
Because I know at Coles, at least the last time I was there 5 years ago, they've always had a plaque up on the wall that has all the past winners of the Subaru Chase.
Okay.
So I kind of was like, well, maybe the Subaru Chase was the Coles race before.
That I don't know. I know, sometimes it would become bragging rights too. Like Joe would have something going on with Coles, my team's going to beat your team. So yeah. Joe always went out and got some good young studs to run for him. And, he always had a good chance of winning.
And was there a relationship? This is more a Buffalo question. Was there and I asked this because I look at there's a photo on the Checkers website history page of a few runners, probably 15 years after the period of time that we're talking about. But you see the sign of you see Checkers, and Shamrock is part of the logo of Checkers, and I'm assuming it was an Irish bar. And Cole's also is. So I was wondering if there's some kind of relationship, some kind of friendly relationship between the two.
I don't believe, not through the symbols.
Yeah.
But Joe might have had a relationship with, the owner, Chatzels or whatever back then. Some kind of just a proud moment thing.
Yeah.
We were, as I said, a lot of people were not all serious runners and didn't do marathons and stuff. They ran some of these little 5-mile races just to have fun and compete and brag about a little bit of stuff. But I don't know if you saw this, but this was my original sweatshirt from Checkers.
Very nice.
That's about what we got. I had a running shirt too. But my daughter joined Checkers while she was in high school, and I let her have it to go running, and I never got it back. So probably ended up in the garbage somewhere. But it's amazing if you think back about the running clothing that we had back then as compared to what's out there today. It was pretty insane. At Fredonia in the winter, our sweatpants were long underwear. The honeycomb long underwear. That's what we wore in the winter to run. With a pair of shorts over them. And when those got wet, you were tugging along a load.
That's when I was a kid in my earliest times running, which I guess would have been 30 years ago, probably. Yeah. I mean, that's the only thing I used long underwear for was running. And I used to do, a mile up the road and back. And that was my running life. I thought it was a big deal.
I remember even the shorts when they went from cloth to the plastic, what they have now, the nylons and everything else. I can't believe the plastic we used to wear was almost like wearing a tarp or a cover.
Yeah.
But we thought it was a great improvement of what we had.
So why was it a great improvement?
When it got wet, it didn't get heavy.
I see.
They're easier to clean off and stuff, and I think they're a little cooler.
Before
shorts had running or inserts on them.
Just as describing it as plastic, it strikes me as monumentally uncomfortable.
No, they actually were a little. Compared to what we had before, they were more comfortable.
Yeah.
But compared to what is out there today, it's a joke. You'd be like, why did we wear this?
Let's see. Well, we've already covered so many things. So at the time, you've kind of mentioned working at NYMO and Runner's Roost. I'm kind of curious what the complications, if I want to call it that. I think even still today, somebody that's, I don't know, these are delicate words because we start to, I don't like to speak like there are definitely different types of runners, right? I mean, there's types of runners that are fitness runners and they run and it's a social thing and they enjoy it. And then there's other types of runners that are like, trying to experience and attain new levels of consciousness with their body. And they dedicate like all their waking minutes to that. And so, and then, so just in everyday life, when you're trying, because it sounds like you were a runner you were competitive, you were on a pretty high level team. I imagine if you were running with Heller and O'Brien, it doesn't sound like you were the top runner on the team, but as the fourth or fifth runner, maybe you had a little pressure on you that, you were training a little bit more and doing everything you could because you knew you had these other guys that were really good runners and was part of.
Yeah, at the time, back in 1970, 71, 69, 70, 71, St. Joe's had an extremely strong team. And you went out and ran every day, and I was running with some horses that, were just unbelievable runners. And you would run along with them and practice, and you know what? You were doing all this and didn't realize that there was anything else. So when they said run a 5-minute mile, okay, everybody else is doing it, so you run it. You didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And I would say it was pretty typical. My junior year at St. Joe's, I don't know what I was on the team, but I was not in the top 7 runners. When it came time for the All Catholics, top 7 go. And they went out and they ran it. Of course, they won. They mopped up the lead. But that year in track, I ran a 4:36 mile, and I couldn't break the top 7 runners on our cross country team. So I thought that was always a very impressive statistic. And the next year, I finished 4th in the All Catholics, and I was the 3rd person from St. Joe's. Bill O'Brien won it, and he was the only holdover from the team before we graduated. 6 of those guys. So we had a long history, but basically I ran faster and stuff because that's what we did every day. We were horses back then. I don't even know if what we did was correct or not, but we did it and we won with it. Did we train our bodies or did we kill them?
It's not really on my itinerary to talk about, but I think, the person that I did my first interview with was Mike Curry, who also ran at St. Joe's.
Yes.
And, I don't know how to ask questions about somebody like Bob Ivory, but obviously he's a super giant legend. And I don't know how to ask questions about him, but I did not run in high school. I didn't start running until I was in my mid-20s. Is it like to where I trained and like ran in races? I went for jogs when I was in high school, but so I don't know how to ask a question about what a high school coach would be like, or so what makes Bob Ivory so legendary? Is it just his years in the game? It sounds like he made a lot of great runners. If you were running 4:36 and didn't even make the team,
Yeah. First of all, he did have a lot of good runners, good horses, and people who worked hard. Mm-hmm. He always had a personality about him, sometimes a little abrasive, but he always put you in your place. And he had innovative ways of doing things. Back in the days when we ran, his budget was limited, so he had to find ways to do stuff. One way, Bob was never married, so Bob had the opportunity to take us to bigger races every weekend, which a lot of kids do now anyways. Back then, nobody did that. We didn't travel. We were going to Rochester, Syracuse, Shenango, down to Pennsylvania every weekend. We were going somewhere, and it usually was Bob taking his station wagon and driving 6 or 7 kids, and Mr. Trammell taking his car and driving 6 or 7 kids, and maybe they had a school van, and off we went. And we'd take 3 or 4 teams to some races and run, and so that was one good thing. But how he paid for that was that he canceled all the buses that people took from their schools to Delaware Park on Tuesdays to compete. So we would run from St. Joe's to Delaware Lane because we didn't have a school bus. Probably was a good idea because it loosened everybody up. You didn't have to worry about your kids being loose and ready to go. But that was just one of his little tricks, And then, as I said, he always kept us running hard and together as a group, and we kind of fed off each other. We had to, and it was kind of nice. I think my sophomore, junior year, we went to so many races, and we would come home with our varsity winning first place, and the junior varsity also winning first place. So we were coming home with trophies every weekend, and that always made you feel good. I still have quite a few paper clippings of it. That's what I sent Bill. When I was looking at when I found Bill O'Brien's article. So that was fun. But I guess other people that I don't know if I don't think Gary Jasinski ever ran for Checkers. He might have, but he was a real workhorse at St. Joe's. He was probably. I mean, he obviously had talent because he was a super runner, but he was a harder worker than anybody I ever met. And,
what characterizes a hard worker in high school running? Like, what is it? Just just somebody going hard every minute, or is it like?
Yeah. Now, he also did more than others would do. One, he ran hard every practice we had. In the off season, he would be training all the time. He did a little bit of weightlifting, which was unheard of back then. He also he used to go out, to work out, go home, eat dinner, do his homework, and then go for a run at night. If you can imagine that, around 9 o'clock at night or so, trying to run. But he did that all the time, and his times improved through high school incredibly. He became one of the top runners in the league. I mean, literally every time a race was run around Delaware Lake, it was Ray Morbido, Alex Trammell, and Gary Jasinski leading the pack all the way around. Nobody touched him. And we went to the Eastern States Championship that year. They won first place with that team. And they ran tremendously. I don't think any of them took. Well, did Alex win that? Alex might have won it, but Alex and Eric, his brother, they were tremendous runners, and then Bill O'Brien. Back then, Maddie really hadn't even started to run. Maddie hadn't come into the picture yet, and when he did come on, he was behind me. He improved like his senior years.
Oh, so Matt Hellerer was younger than you?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
A year or two younger. And he came in late. I think he actually might have been in crew as a coxman at first, but then he came on and became just a tremendous runner. And he actually, I don't know how well you know Matt. Matt has a lot of the mannerisms that Bob Ivory had himself. You talk to him. Because I had a son run for Matt recently, 2010, 2011. And I went over and talked to Matt. I used to go to all the races and so forth.
So Matt's a coach somewhere. I don't know Matt Hellerer.
Okay. Matt is he's the retired cross-country coach at St. Joe's. He is a chemistry teacher there.
I see.
And he's one of those chemistry teachers that really push the kids. He really did. Your grades didn't go up in Matt's class. And he was also a little wacky, which the kids loved because they loved his personality and stuff and how to do things. He related to them well. I think he's still teaching, but he might have retired last year. And then they had a couple other coaches for a very short time. And I believe that last year, Gary Jasinski, who was retired from Riches, took over the coaching job for a little bit. Gary should be pretty good. He's got a good personality for the kids. He coached Mount St. Mary's for a year or two, and then went down to East Aurora for a year or two. Gary's got good knowledge of it. He's got good knowledge of everything. He competed in college, and then now I believe his big exercise is swimming. He gets up in the morning, goes swimming. He still looks like he could run.
This is Matt. That's a swimmer now.
No, Gary Jasinski.
Okay. Let's see. So as I, went over a lot of the old, whatever race results I could find, it seems like you were running intense for a few years with Checkers in the late 70s. But then I just, it seems like after 1980, I didn't really see your name and results very much. maybe you would start to focus on marathons. Maybe you kind of drifted away from running, weren't really competing anymore.
Well, there's a good reason for that. I got married.
But
1981, I got married.
yeah, that was part of the question. I was like, I wonder if there was, what, if he had just gotten tired, if maybe he had gotten married, yeah, something like that.
Well, the other thing is we I had advanced in Niagara Mohawk to the point where I was working out at the Huntley Steam Station as an instrumentation technician. Our hours were longer, we overtime quite a bit. I did get married in '81, and then we started to do things. My extra time. My brother and I also opened up. My brother Michael and I opened up a runner's roost on Delaware Avenue, north of Sheridan, and that lasted a couple of years, and then we closed it. But so I was working there a couple nights a week, so I'd be, I running out of time. So
Yeah.
I didn't train as much. I did start to lose it, and I didn't compete. I ran once in a while, but not as anything near what I was doing. My prime years were probably, as you said, 77, 78, 79.
Yeah.
That was when I was training pretty hard for marathons and doing a lot of road racing. The other races, like I said, the race that we used to run a lot were 20Ks. And I always enjoyed those. I thought they were just long enough to not have to worry about some real fast people, but you weren't sore the next day after like you would be a marathon.
Yeah. I remember, 15 years ago, there was that 20K that they started doing. It was like the Fleet. Maybe it was a 15K. I think it was a 15K. But, Dan Longto had started it. And I remember hearing him talk about part of the reason he started it was because that was like a distance that used to be done a lot.
Right.
And, it didn't seem to last. I don't know. I think it lasted almost 10 years, maybe. But yeah, I think
You're not going to get your 2,000 contestant, people out there doing competitors. You might get 500, but then back in the day, 500 was a big race.
Yeah.
And there weren't as many races. So, the one we used to go run every year was down in Rome, New York, Fort Stanwix run. It was a 20K that was very popular and usually get some tremendous competitors. In fact, the one year I ran that race in somewhere 72, 73 minutes. And I was at about the 8-mile mark. And this girl came by me. She was a runner for Penn State and like one of the Olympic champions. Nice. And she came by me like I was standing still. I was like, holy mackerel. And of course, there's a line of about 30 guys trying to run with her because they couldn't believe that this girl could run this fast. Yeah. But she was just burying everybody come flying down the road. I was awed. I was like, oh, that girl could run. And she just looked comfortable as heck, just flying down there. So
that was it. She just ran away, never to be seen.
Never saw her again. I was just happy to finish my race.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up. A big part of, I'm trying to find some women that were involved back in the running.
Well, Nancy Nishak is still around in the area. She lives on Grand Island with her husband, Mike.
Everybody's on Grand Island. Because there's
Nancy was the first woman that I knew. Her name back then was Nancy Dragoo.
Uh-huh.
And she ran for Checkers. And she was a beast.
Yeah.
She could run. She'd run a 10K 35 minutes, 36 minutes. I mean, she ran. She'd be right up in the front starting line and all these guys would be looking at her like, why is this girl up there rearing trample? And at the end of the race, we're all going up going, man, you ran good. You blew by me. She was very good. And she might even still run. She was a physical education teacher? She's a teacher, I think, in Buffalo schools, but she came from out of town, like somewhere like Albany or something like that. But and then her husband today, Mike Bishak, Mike was a very good runner. I believe Mike did marathons in the low 230s, maybe even a little better. I see him; he still looks like he can run. I see him up at the River Oaks Golf Course, walking all the time and stuff now. But they're probably a little older than I am. But boy, she could compete.
Another name that I came across, and I'm just, maybe trying to track people down to talk to them about the times. There's a name that I see, the Bissell. I'm getting that wrong. Marjorie Bissell, Helen.
There's a Bissell. They ran the Grand Island Track Club.
There's
the father was the mother and the father were very heavily into the Grand Island High School track team. They had a very good team. The father actually was one of the officials at all your road races for a long time. I don't know if he still is, but.
Well, there's also on July 4th every year, there's the Dick Bessel. It's a 2.3 mile race that's been done for a long time. It's the same family name. The results that I've seen are of this young woman. It seems that she was like 15 years old showing up at these 10Ks, and she was, doing 37-minute 10Ks as a 15-year-old.
I know her, no, but I do recognize the name, and I recognize her efforts. She was a very good runner. She was probably one of the area's better runners at her age. I don't know what happened to her once she got to college. I don't know if she was great or not.
Well, I mean, the research will continue, but a couple other things, and this kind of goes along with, I think, at least when I started running 15 to 20 years ago, I started off as a marathoner primarily. And 15 or 20 years ago, like if you went out for a 20-mile run, like everybody around you like thought you were insane, and they had never heard anybody do a 20-mile run before. Now, running and marathons have grown to the point where everybody's done a marathon to a certain extent, and not to reduce it, but it's like it's on everybody's bucket list. They want to do a marathon. And so I kind of have this imagination that as much as a wild man that marathoners might have been in the early 2000s, people going out and putting out 20 milers on a Saturday morning in 1976, like you guys must have been super crazy wild men.
Yeah, we were pretty much thought of as nuts.
Yeah.
Why the hell would you want to do that? I'll take my car. It's perfectly comfortable.
Yeah.
You did get some comments like that once in a while, but then like when we did the 24-hour relay and people saw you out there running around, and they were just awed by, holy crap, he can do this. This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Because almost all the checkers that night came over to the track to watch and help out and volunteer and do everything else. So all your regular bar drinkers who used to tease you all the time, you're crazy. They were there to support you, and they did a good job. So yeah, but running 20 miles was kind of nuts. And back in those days, as I said, people started to put on some extra real mileage, during the I don't want to say off season, but you go in a wave kind of a thing, and when you don't have any marathons really coming, you may back down to 35, 40 miles a week. Then when you start building up, you get up into your 10 miles a day, 70, start building your base, 70. And I think the hardest I ever trained, I was averaging somewhere like 110 miles a week. So I was running maybe 6 in the morning and 16 in the afternoon or something. But then the running craze came along, and I believe Bill Rogers won the Boston Marathon that one year, and they said he trained by doing 130 miles of running a week. I believe today that they wouldn't do that. It's just too much beating your body up. And it's nice to be out there doing that long, slow distance and building your muscles up, but you also take quite a beating doing them.
Yeah.
noticed by the knees and hips that are being replaced on everybody today.
I mean, uh, again, last interview was done with Mike Curry, hip replacement.
Right.
We started off with you, knee replacement. I like to believe that these are, you guys must be genetically predisposed to these things. I hope nothing like this happens to me.
Well, I'll tell you one thing is, if you ever get a chance, and they still sell them, I believe. Adidas has the Gazelle running shoe.
Okay.
It almost looks like a soccer shoe. That used to be like the top running shoe in our area. And that was the one we had to have. It was the best one. I put one on maybe around the 2000s. I thought I was wearing a cardboard boot compared to what's out there today. So the advancement of what's absorbing the impact is one thing. Hopefully the training of, like you guys you're not doing that 100 miles a week necessarily. Maybe you're only doing 70, but out of that 70, 1 or 2 nights a week might be on a track. So you're only doing 5 miles on track, but it's high intensity work. So the change ideas are also there. And hopefully, as we get better and diets get better and so forth, we stay healthier.
A little bit more on we'll start to kind of wrap it up after this. Again, so the time we're talking about, you're running in the 20 to 24 age group, very young man. And this is, just at the beginning of the running boom or before that. So, you're kind of wild man being a 23-year-old guy doing 70-mile weeks. Well, how would you at that time, I'm curious, well, yeah, I mean, how would you have looked at, or what would have I imagine almost a certain mystique that might have existed around some of the older masters runners. There's a lot of guys, especially the Bell Watlings. I'm super curious about the Bell Watlings. Even in this era, they're all 40 and 50 years old. There's a guy named Ralph Zimmerman whose name is all over the results. Seems to have been a great runner. What was? Yeah, I'm just kind of curious what because at the time, like now, if you go to the race scene, it's like 80% of the runners are 35 and older, right? And there's hardly anybody that's in the 20 to 24 age group. Whereas it was the opposite then. Like there's not very many people that are 40 and up running, but the Bell Watlings are like, they're all 40 and up, and they're like still in the top 10 of all the races. What do you know about the Bell Watlings?
They were a great group. My brother belonged to them. Dick Sullivan first of all, they all had a personality of their characters.
Yeah.
Here's Dick Sullivan, a house painter, and this guy would come over there and run. And I don't know if you've ever run with Dick, but he had a little swing to his arm that was like a time clock. And if you wanted to run a 3-hour marathon, you ran with Dick because you were going to be between 2:56 and 3:05. I mean, this guy was automatic. And he was strong. But they did have quite a few characters on the team. Ralph Zimmerman was a beast. And when Ralph started to run, he was well over 200 pounds. And he was married, divorced, and then with all that, so I didn't get into it then. But and he started running and became very, very good. I think Ralph, the 1 year, qualified for the Olympics, and he ran about a 2:17 marathon down in Georgia or something like that. And that wasn't when he was a 25-year-old.
Yeah.
But these guys all had it. Even where the name Bell Watling came from.
I don't know.
Oh, okay. In Gone with the Wind, Bell Watling was the hooker.
Okay. No. Yeah.
So that's where the name for the club came. And they had a number of good runners. They had one runner who was a long, lanky gentleman, older than us, older than Dick. And at the time, he had a lot of back troubles. so he could run. But he got to the point where he couldn't run anymore in practice because his back got so bad. So he used to come over to Delaware Park with cross-country skis on wheels and do 6-7 laps with those, and he'd fly around. He'd go faster than I ever ran around that park.
Yeah.
And he stayed in great shape doing that, and then jump in a race here or there. Dave Bogdan was another runner for him. Dave was a very tough, good runner. Dave was a nurse. You didn't hear of male nurses back then. I believe, as the story goes, Dave even survived a plane crash. And he's out there running. Everybody's heard of Tommy Donnelly, obviously, from Checkers. Tom has a brother, Bill.
Yeah.
And if you ever saw Bill run, you would never compliment him on his form. But Bill was an extremely gutsy runner. He muscled through every race. And I know that there was, I believe in one of the races, marathons, he was under 240. Bill was just a gutsy guy. And Bill would go out and run every day and would run 10 to 15 miles every day and brought his dog with him every day. And the dog would run around the park with him without a leash, just stay right with him all the way around the park. And it was kind of interesting. And I saw Bill out there running on days where human beings weren't supposed to be outside. Like you couldn't see in front of you because the snow was coming down so hard. All of a sudden, you see some guy running at Delaware Park, and it's Bill Donnelly, all wrapped up and running. But
underwear and shorts.
he was tough. He was very tough. So they did have a group of characters, but they were great. They were great.
Yeah. Tom Donnelly ran for the Bell Watlings?
Tom, I read something today where I think he did start there, but then he went to Checkers and took over running the Checkers. He started to hang out at Checkers. His first marriage was to Nancy Bishak's sister. And then they ended up splitting, I believe, when their children got a little older. And, he married his second wife and they had a good time. Tom actually started to get better then, become a more prominent, better runner back then. And when he first started out, he was behind me a little, but I think his times finally ended up beating my times. So he probably started to run with his brother. But yeah, they were quite a group. They were great. Because a lot of times, because my brother belonged to him, when I go on a road race, you end up afterwards at some bar with them and doing something. We used to have there was a 10K that used to be run down in Fredonia. It was called the Cook's Brewery Run. It was run right around the campus.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty quick, hard run. And that was when I was going to school down there. So these guys would come down and then they ended up in my apartment drinking and stuff and having a good time. I remember being at Presque Island and they all had a group of rooms and most people were jumping in the pool because they were getting cramps like crazy and they couldn't stand it anymore. I was not feeling pleasant that day. It was my first marathon. I had no experience of what you're going to feel like after a marathon. So I was hurting, but it was a good time. I enjoyed it. And once in a while I'll see Dick. Is he still?
I think so. I haven't seen him. I mean, and nobody's seen anybody this year, but yeah, a little funny. I mean, I think he's 90 now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I do landscape work. And so I know like 4 years ago, he doesn't know me, but he's a recognizable figure to anybody that hangs out in the running world. And I'm working on a job, digging some holes, slugging some materials around, and like Dick Sullivan shows up as a house painter, and he's moving ladders around the site. He's up working 3 stories high in this ladder, painting. He's like 26 years old, and I'm like, man, this guy. I'm like, it kind of blew me away.
And they also had a couple of. I'm not positive. I might be getting mixed up with people for Monic, but I think it was Belani. They had 1 or 2 lawyers that were running, and just a lot of times people would do it to stay healthier. Also keep them out of the bars. So you wouldn't end up going out of work to a bar at home. If you had to run in that period, it kept you a lot healthier.
Yeah.
I always remember running by Checkers going, I'd really like to sit down there. And I was on my way home.
Yeah, I think it holds true to today that it's very important to have a place that serves alcoholic beverages as the team's meeting point if you want to grow your team.
The back in the days, obviously you know about Checkers on Thanksgiving morning. That is their busiest. After the turkey trot is Checkers' busiest day of the year.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So, and that's been true for a long time. There was a year where we ran the turkey trot, and the night before the turkey trot, Checkers caught fire.
Ooh.
But they opened up in the morning. They had plywood over the holes in the floor. I know the beer we were drinking was probably in the fire, and the place was packed.
Wow. Holes in the floor.
Yeah, where they had chopped holes, the firemen had chopped holes in the floor. And so there's everybody standing on this plywood in there drinking, having fun. Now, you know, the turkey trot, I don't know if you weren't around for the beginning of the turkey trot.
Nobody.
Back in the day when I started running, there were two gentlemen in Buffalo who were responsible for a lot of the running. One was Carl Resch. And Carl was a coach at King's College, but he also got very involved in the AAU. And there, so he organized and did a lot of the stuff for the race. And he also ran races in the summer, AAU track meet races. And you'd go out there and Carl would handicap everything, you know, and I swear to God, he did it so he could make sure everybody got a medal sometime in the summer. Because, you know, I'd go out to a race and all of a sudden this guy I'm competing with, I have a 35-second handicap on. So I get a head start for 35 seconds and we're running a half mile. So of course you get the medal, you know. And I just threw a bunch of them out last week. They gave them to the kids next door. But he was fun. But the first turkey trot I ever ran, I don't know how many people were in it, but I'll say 100, 150. And we lined up in the gym in the Delaware Y.
Yeah.
It's not a large gym, so it couldn't have been that many people.
Yeah.
And as your turn came to take off, Carol called you out. And, you know, so I got like a 4-minute handicap over who probably could end up being the winners. You know, I think it was Brian Quinn and George Sauer or something like that.
So you were given a handicap at the turkey trot?
Yes. So I got like a 4-minute head start on, you know, and inevitably somebody would get a handicap that wasn't right and probably win the darn thing. But, you know, I always remember the great runners. You know, I'd be going like somewhere around North Street and they come flying by me. But they were pretty good. Brian Quinn was a top runner in the area. Then he ran for St. Joe's. he was unbelievable. In fact, he was. They had trouble getting him to stop. Calm down, rest a little bit. The guy would go out and run 10 miles a morning of a marathon.
Get warmed up.
But that is an interesting note. I don't think people realize it wasn't always a 14,000 people race.
Right.
You know,
yeah, I mean, even the earliest, I have results printed off from 1975, and there's, I think, 285 runners in 1975.
Yeah.
So.
And I run in all sorts of weather and shape. And there was a period of time when we were in college, we'd see who could stay out the latest and still make the race, and not leave his part of his inside somewhere along Delaware.
Most grown adults still do that today, I think. Turkey trot experience.
My first couple, you know, we tried to compete, but they were fun. They were a lot of fun races. Again, people thought you were nuts. Who the hell wants to run all the way down Delaware on Thanksgiving morning? And I remember one time where it snowed and Delaware Avenue was just nothing but slush. So every step you took or the person next to you took, you got their slush splashed on you. And that was a tough race then. And then it used to end at, do you know the corridor between, I think it's what they call the Genesee building, and the convention center? If you could walk between those two buildings and go like over to the Hyatt from Franklin.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay, that's right. Yeah, there's a catwalk that goes over the top.
Yeah.
You can walk through to
there's a door on that building on your left.
Yeah.
And if you look at it, it says YMCA. That used to be the downtown YMCA. That was the original finish line before the convention center.
From the Y to the Y.
Right. From the Delaware Y to the Mohawk Y.
Nice.
And then it changed and it went down to finish at the Waterfront School for a couple of years. When it went to the Delaware Y to the Mohawk Y, I don't believe it was a true 5 miles. When it went to the Waterfront Park, I think it was a little bit longer than 5 miles.
Yeah.
And now it's to today where it's accurate, or pretty darn close. But they did have to move the finish line around a little bit for a while there.
And why were they moving it? Just trying to get the distance right?
Well, the convention center was probably being built.
Yeah.
And you couldn't run there. Once the convention center was built, Mohawk Street, where that finish line was gone.
So when did they build that convention center? I never considered that. And I've imagined that even in 1920, when they ran the turkey trot, the convention center is still there, but I guess that's not the case.
It was going to be early 70s.
Yeah.
Early to mid 70s.
And so
I know in like 1977, 78, because my wife ran too. We were going to the Waterfront School. When everybody ran. And that's when I think the running, really kicked into boom. That's when the race really grew and everything.
Yeah. Well, I think I kind of got to wrap this up because I can't. When we show this next Tuesday, I can't take up everybody's entire night, especially me. We show these at 7:30. We do track workout at 5:30. I race home so that I can have a little bite to eat, and then we do this show. By the time 8:45 rolls around, I'm past my bedtime. So
I'm usually horizontal on the couch.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it, Matt. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it, and I hope to meet you someday when we come out of the pandemic, and maybe someday you'll stop over to the Logren's race and have a post-race beer.
I would love to do that.
Well,
thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
No problem. Thank you.